So this is part 3A, Springer affair, Springer deal, big deal. So how did he pick his victims? His subjects, his objects of adoration? And I couldn't figure this for the longest time. So I went down one year, in fact really in my mid-30s, and I'm trying to weigh all these things I've heard. I didn't quit on it. I didn't quit on the case, still haven't. Really, this is part of it. I better adjust this, eh? So, in comes this guy called Ken. Sits down, says, and Springer was still at the school then. And he says, well, geez, I was supposed to go for a parent-teacher meeting. But I don't think I'll go. 3 years later, I didn't put it together. 3 years later, I find out that kid, that he didn't go to the parents-teachers meeting, was one of his victims, or adorations. Poor kid. And his own parents wouldn't, well, they didn't get along with that. They said it was his fault, the kid's fault. After. I mean, it was really a jerk up. And I can't figure that out because they're supposed to be too intelligent. The guy was intelligent normally. But this is stressful, man. So then I put it together. He was head of the promotions committee. My parents, if the teacher called them in for a meeting, they'd go. If my mom couldn't go, she'd send my parents, my dad. So he'd go down, have the meeting, he'd come back, report to her, and then she went down and to talk to them anyways. No holding back on my mother. And I observed this. And I suddenly remembered. He was head of the promotions committee. He would also know who showed up for the parent-teachers meeting. If the parents bothered to show up at the parents-teachers meetings, he left the kid alone. Seriously. There were some kids, yeah, that's how he picked his victims. If your parents didn't show up, he'd go, they don't give a crap. And that kid would be invited down to his camp, plied with a few bottles of booze, and taken advantage of. Seriously. When you're that young, you're taken advantage of. Kids all thought it was great. I knew some kids, a couple of kids, they went down to his camp for a celebratory drinking and gambling, and yeah, he had a party down there with booze, underage, and he was the vice principal. This was known to the police. OPP, PPP, and Marathon Police Service, they knew about it. They'd have to be pretty stupid not to. And that was kind of neat. That's how he picked his victims. But he had invited some kids who were associated with important people in the town. And he wouldn't touch them either. But he used them as bait. Because usually if your dad's a big boss, and then you're all popular, and down you go. So if your parents were influential, or your parents showed up for the parent-teachers meeting, you made it out alive. That's the way I looked at it. So you really can't blame your parents. It all went to his manipulations. But understanding how he did it, how he picked his victims, is very important to understand how they do it. And I don't think his methods are all that much different than everybody else's, I guess. I wouldn't know. But that's what I found. As for the adults that helped them, well, I think they knew about it and went to check on it and decided they weren't going to fight him, they'd join him. And get a few jollies on the side. Boy, it was... Being a kid, Marathon was a rich town, but we could have done with a few impoverished things and lesser jerks. And that's the problem. Not all the parents were all that bad, and yeah. So that's how he worked. I hope that helps. Hope it helps somebody today. Believe your kid until you get proven otherwise. You know if the kid's lying. But it isn't a case of lying. The parents didn't even bother. They didn't want to know. They couldn't be bothered. The kid was just, when he gets a tax deduction, something to procreate the name. That's a compelling reason. But these kids were left on their own. And they still are. They don't grow up. You can't grow up from that. I wonder how many kids got screwed up for life. It's gotta be. Gotta be. Well, let's end the part.